Good day. Today I will begin reading short stories, fairy tales, and whatever else amuses a notebook like myself. On this day of my very first attempt, I'm sure a notebook like myself may take a bit to get used to reading out loud, so bear with me. I will tell you a short story on someone that is an old friend to me and to some of you. His name is Sherlock Holmes, and this is a very short story called The Field Bazaar. Let us begin. I should certainly do it, said Sherlock Holmes. I started at the interruption, for my companion had been eating his breakfast with his attention entirely centered upon the paper which he propped up by the coffee pot. Now I looked across him to find his eyes fastened upon me with a half-amused, half-questioning expression which he usually assumed when he felt he had made an intellectual point. "Do what?" I asked. He smiled as he took his slipper from the mantelpiece and drew from it enough shack tobacco to fill an old clay pipe, with which he invariably rounded off his breakfast. "A most characteristic question of yours, Watson," said he. "You will not, I am sure, be offended if I say that any reputation for sharpness which I may possess has been entirely gained by the admirable foil which you have made for me. Have I not heard debutantes who have insisted upon plainness in their chaperons? This is certainly an analogue." Our long companionship in Bakersfield rooms had left us those easy terms of intimacy which may be said without offense, and yet I acknowledged that I was needled at his remark. "I may be obtuse," said I, "but I confess that I am unable to see how you managed to know that I was asked to help in the Edinburgh University Bazaar." "Precisely. The letter has only just come to hand, and I have not spoken to you since." "In spite of that," said Holmes, leaning back in his chair and putting his fingertips together, "I would even venture to suggest that the object of the bazaar is to enlarge the university cricket field." I looked at him in such bewilderment that he vibrated with silent laughter. "The fact is, my dear Watson, that you are an excellent subject," said he. "You are never base. You respond instantly to any external stimulus. Your mental process may be slow, but they are never obscure. And I found during breakfast that you were a much easier read than the leader in the Times in front of me." "I should be glad to know how you arrived at your conclusion," said I. "I fear that my good nature in giving explanations has seriously compromised my reputation," said Holmes. "But in this case the train of reasoning is based upon such obvious facts that no credit can be claimed for it. You entered the room with a delightful expression, the expression of a man who is debating some point in his mind. In your hand you held a solitary letter. Now last night you were retired in the best of spirits, so it was clear that it was this letter in your hand which had caused the change in you. This is obvious. It is all obvious when it is explained to you. I naturally asked myself what the letter could contain which might have this effect upon you. As you walked, you held the flap side of the envelope towards me, and I saw upon the same shield-shaped device which I observed upon your old college cricket cap. It was clear, then, that the request came from Edinburgh University or from some club connected with the university. When you reached the table, you laid down the letter beside your plate, with the address uppermost, and you walked over to look at the framed photograph upon the left of the mantelpiece. It amazed me to see the accuracy with which he had observed my movements. "What next?" I asked. "I began by glancing at the address, and I could tell, even at the distance of 6 feet, that it was an unofficial communication. This I gathered from the use of the word doctor upon the address, to which, as a bachelor of medicine, you have no legal claim. I know that the university officials are pedantic in their correct use of titles, and I was thus enabled to say with certainty that your letter was unofficial. When on your return to the table you turned over your letter and allowed me to perceive that the enclosure was a printed one, the idea of a bazaar first occurred to me. I had already weighed the possibility of its being a political communication, But this seemed improbable in the present stagnant conditions of politics. When you returned to the table, your face still retained an expression, and it was evident that your examination of the photograph had not changed the current of your thoughts. In that case, it must itself bear upon the subject in question. I returned my attention to the photograph, therefore, and saw at once that it consisted of yourself as a member of the Edinburgh University 11, with the pavilion and the cricket field in the background. My small experience of cricket clubs has taught me that next to churches and cavalry ensigns, they are the most debt-laden things upon earth. When upon your return to the table I saw you take out your pencil and draw lines upon the envelope, I was convinced that you were endeavoring to realize some project improvement which was to be brought about by a bazaar. Your face still showed some indecision, so that I was able to bring in upon you with my advice that you should assist in so good an object. I could not help smiling at the extreme simplicity of his explanation. Of course, it was as easy as possible, said I. My remark appeared to needle him. I may add, said he, that the particular help which you have been asked to give was that you should write in your album, and that you have already made up your mind that the present incident will be the subject of your article. But how? I cried. It is as easy as possible, said he, and I leave its solution to your own ingenuity. In the meantime, he added, raising his paper, you will excuse me if I return to this very interesting article upon the trees of Cremona and the exact reasons for their preeminence in the manufacture of violins. It is one of those small outlying problems to which I am sometimes tempted to direct my attention. As a notebook, I've known a story or two, and this one wasn't the best, but my, did I make it sound ever more dry. I believe next time I will try a fairy tale instead, and see how this old book does with that. Have a good week, my new friends.